I just thought, I can't take anymore. I'm going to snap. Staring at a ceiling fan in Bali, just thinking, how am I going to get ourselves out of this mess? You know, if I could be on 100 grand a year, I'd be laughing. I'd be able to do whatever. Now we might make that in profit in a month. Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast, where we unlock the secrets to high-ticket dropshipping and achieving financial freedom. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and I'm joined by James Erdley, client success coach at Dropship Unlocked. Each episode, we'll be sharing our experiences and providing you with the tools you need to build a successful e-commerce empire of your own. From zero to owning £1 million online business, we'll help you achieve the ultimate freedom over your time, location, and financial future. And when we're not recording the podcast episodes or running our own e-commerce businesses, you'll find us helping people like you launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. To learn more about working with us, head over to dropshipunlocked.com/free. Now sit back, relax, and get ready to access your full potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast. Hi, everybody. So in today's episode of the podcast, I'm excited to be sharing my own story and giving you a bit of a sneak peek into behind the scenes of what it took for me to grow my own series of online businesses. So enjoy this episode. We're going to be talking about the highs, the great times of running online businesses, and some of the lows as well, so you can see a really unfiltered path for how you could do the same to grow a successful high-ticket dropshipping store.
That's right. We have a really exciting podcast episode today. We'll be taking a deep dive into Lewis's story. So from the moment that he answered the call to adventure, to the challenges he faced along the way, and ultimately the success that he has now achieved through his hard work and perseverance. So it's my job to put Lewis on the spot today and ask him some tough questions that will give you, our listeners, some valuable insights and strategies for your own e-commerce journey. So we'll head straight into it, Lewis. So we'll start with the time. We'll go back in time. We'll start before you've even started your e-commerce journey. So take me back to your previous life. What were you doing before you started your e-commerce business?
Yeah, so my background was quite different, nothing to do with e-commerce. I was working for an American big corporate company in the medical devices sector, so selling medical devices, diagnostics, doing business cases for the NHS, and it was a completely different world. But I'd graduated from uni, I'd joined their UK and Ireland sales and marketing graduate training program and done rotations around the company and seen all the different medical device divisions in this big corporate American company. And I had a good life. I had the company car, had a nice corporate credit card that I could use. I had the gold standard pension. I had that job security that I think a lot of people aspire to. But I think deep down, I always felt that I wasn't reaching my full potential. I ticked all the boxes in that sense and I'd achieved a great position, was on a great trajectory and would have continued to work hard and work my way up the corporate ladder in that world. And a lot of people did and would remain very happy doing so. But for me, there was always this kind of niggling feeling in the background that was like, you could be doing something different. You could be doing something that makes a huge difference in people's lives directly and doing it yourself. And I just didn't know what it was back then. And so, it wasn't until one day at a meeting with a colleague that we were in London and we went to this kind of swanky hotel bar in like the mid-afternoon, I think it was, to go and have a meeting. And we sat down and I just remember seeing this group of like cool entrepreneur, like startup guys and girls that were all sitting with their laptops. They had their MacBooks out and they were drinking like coffees or cocktails or, they just looked like they were living the life. And I thought, man, that's cool. Like there's me in my suit, like kind of got my collar done up, my tie on and everything, very formal in this corporate world. And I just thought, I feel like I should be one of them, but I don't know how do they get there? How did they do that? How are they there on a Friday mid-afternoon having drinks, working on their businesses? And the colleague that I was with said, have you ever considered running a startup? I always saw you as someone in the entrepreneurship space. And I said, no, I haven't actually. And then that stuck with me for the next few weeks. And I just kind of thought, could I? I wonder if no one had ever given me permission. And I think that maybe had been what I was waiting for. I didn't realize that at any moment I could just stand up and, take permission and that wasn't even required. So later that evening, I think it was, I was Googling books on entrepreneurship and stumbled across the holy grail of entrepreneurship, the Bible in some entrepreneurship circles, known as the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And for me, that's where it all began.
Well, I can completely resonate with that story because, you tick the boxes. You went through you graduated uni into the corporate world, was doing well in that lifestyle, but there was something missing is what it sounds like. And it resonates with me. I'm sure it resonates with some of our listeners as well. So using that experience, how do you think that experience has led to where you are now?
Yeah, I think it's been a long journey, but to cut a long story short, that was the moment, that was the book that really inspired me to do something about it. I think up until that point, I had assumed that someone would almost nominate you as an entrepreneur and tell you that you are now an entrepreneur and you now run your own business. Anyone who's ever done it knows that day is never going to come. If that's what you're waiting for, you'll be sorely disappointed. So I think it inspired me to launch my first e-commerce business, and what a rocky road that was, trying to figure stuff out, through trial and error a lot of the time. But we did ultimately do it. And interestingly, I remember the day that my fiance at the time and now wife, Becky, and I both quit our jobs on the same day. That was a really nerve-wracking day because, these weren't jobs that we hated. They're far from it. They were really stable, secure jobs that we'd worked very hard to get and were on a great trajectory. And we left on good terms with those companies. But the day that we handed in our resignations and we met in the park in London, it was a sunny day in the park, and we walked there to meet after work and sat on a bench, and Becky pulled out 2 of these M&S cans of gin and tonic, and we just sat there and kind of cheers, and we're like, are we making a huge mistake? I don't know if what we've just done is throwing it all away, all of the stuff we've worked for the last 10 years, handing back the company car keys. We had a mortgage on the house that we owned. And over the next few weeks, though, we sold our stuff to our friends. We had this funny kind of auction thing at our house where we auctioned off all of our belongings. And then over the coming weeks, we eventually got married. And then shortly after that, we moved to northern Thailand for a while to live in Chiang Mai for the next year or so, which was an amazing place with an incredible community of digital nomads and entrepreneurs living a location independent experience over there. And it was incredible to see other people succeeding in the world of e-commerce and in this space, running their own online businesses, some of them dropshipping, many of them dropshipping in the US. And yeah, spent the next few years kind of with extended stays in various exotic locations around the world. So we spent time living in Vietnam, in Bali, spent time living in Mexico, more recently actually in Dubai, just before the world kind of changed a lot with recent events. But in the last 5 years or so, just to kind of bring us up to date on where we are now, my online businesses have generated, I think it's about £6 million in sales now across all of them. So, which is amazing. And I think what I'm even more proud of is that I've built a team now of, I think it's 11 people whose lives we've had a direct impact on. And we actually had our team meeting yesterday, which is awesome. And, I've got 2 children now, 2 boys, and married to an amazing wife, Becky. And I just look back at my life then and think, wow, if I hadn't read that book or listened to that audiobook, none of this would have been possible. None of these people in our team would be doing what they're doing. None of the people whose lives we've changed in our company would be in that position. It's just funny the way that this domino effect works.
Amazing. I just think back to you in a park, cracking open those cans, the mixture of excitement knowing that you were about to have this amazing adventure, but the other half of you must have had that fear, thinking, what if this all goes wrong? What have I done? And the bravery to actually go out and make that decision to leave the 9-to-5 corporate world that you've done so well to go through to that point, to leave that all behind and start something fresh. Obviously, took some real bravery to do that. But obviously, you mentioned that you read the 4-Hour Work Week. I'm interested to dive in why it was e-commerce. So what was the moment that you realized that e-commerce was your specific calling? So what really inspired you to pursue this path despite the challenges and risks that would be involved?
Yeah, so I think in that book, Tim Ferriss talks about this concept of the new rich, right? And for anybody that hasn't read that book, you've got to go and read it. You've got to go and have a listen to it after you've finished this podcast. But also, if you have read that book, go back and revisit it, have another listen to it, because a few years later, you pick up parts of it that you just didn't resonate with the first time. So it's a really, really good book. It's like the handbook for how to achieve this kind of location independence. But he talks about these I think he calls them muses in the book, right? And they're like these ventures that you can do that aren't necessarily career driven, but they are an enabler to create you an income source that enables you to then be location independent and have that time and location freedom as your currency of the future rather than money. The traditional route has always been like, you work your way up, you get a good pension, you retire with a nice pot of money, and then you drift off into the sunset. But the reality is what he talks about in that book that really made e-commerce come to life for me was the concept of mini retirements. So saying, well, why do we wait till we're 60 and then retire for the years of our life where maybe we don't have the health available to us? Why not take, 6 months out when we're in our late 20s or 30s and go and enjoy some time in your full health when your children are young, whilst you can really enjoy that time. Not saying you can't enjoy it after 60, but you know what I mean? Your body's more young, you're in better health. So it's I think it was that I thought, well, e-commerce sounds like a great way of doing it. And he does allude to dropshipping. He talks about a dropshipping company that he started, I think, in the book. And I looked it up and I went down the rabbit hole and listened to loads of different podcasts, people talking about dropshipping products from China, which, as you know, at Dropship Unlocked is not something that we do. We work with UK suppliers, ship products to UK customers. But I listened to all of them. I listened to podcasts on affiliate marketing and FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. But something didn't sit right with me about having an FBA business that was kind of controlled by Amazon, where they were the gatekeeper and told me whether or not my business would be open the next day. I didn't like the idea of having that risk. But with dropshipping, specifically high ticket dropshipping in the UK, I thought, well, the risks are pretty minimal because there's not a huge amount of overheads. You don't have to buy any stock up front until you make sales. And it was, for me, the risk really was the risk of, well, if I don't do it, the risk is, and almost the certainty is, that in 5 years' time, right now, I would be exactly where I was 5 years ago, or just slightly more locked into a career path that I didn't want to be on ultimately. And it's difficult, is that he calls it tolerable mediocrity in the book. And I think that's a key thing. Like, so many of us are going through our careers and are like, well, it's not that bad. I don't hate my job. But if you don't love what you're doing, life's too short. You click your fingers and you'll be 10 years further into that. And you think, well, that's 10 years you could have been doing something that you did love doing. So I think sometimes people are scared. And for me, the biggest risk was not making a decision, not doing anything about it, and just kind of continuing down that route. I saw other people in other markets succeeding at this. Certainly in the USA, dropshipping is a lot more established and it was huge there. I saw people doing huge numbers. And I just thought, well, if they can do it, sure, I don't have the answers yet, but I know I could do it if I had the answers. And I think there was a penny drop moment where I just thought, I don't have the answers now, but in my mindset, if I shifted my mindset to all I need is the willingness to learn the answers, and it was just like someone had lifted the glass ceiling from above me again. It was this limiting belief of like, but you won't be able to do it because, you don't have the answers. You're not a developer, you can't write web code, whatever. And you just realize over time, it's like, well, I don't need to be able to do that. I just need to learn enough to be able to build the business and then hire the people and the experts that do those things well. So, and that's kind of, I think that's what drew me to e-commerce.
Yeah, I think what you're describing there is sort of the realization of a new world. And in the 4-Hour Work Week, which again, I've read 4 or 5 times and listened to the audiobook as a bit of a Bible for me as well. It talks about people being time poor. Even if you've got money in the bank, but you've got no time because you're working for 40 plus hours a week, and that's probably similar to what you resonated with that and realized that there was a new way. So there was that moment of realization that there was something else you could be doing to really make the most of your life, move away from that tolerable mediocrity that so many people just accept and put up with throughout life, and really go for something where you'd be absolutely thriving every day. So certainly inspiring for me to hear. So we're going to go back to any sort of previous experience. So did you have any previous experience at all in e-commerce before you started and decided that was going to be the path for you?
No, I wouldn't. I certainly nothing in e-commerce. I probably didn't even really know what the term meant. I'd heard it on Amazon and stuff, but I didn't really understand how I could run a business like that. So no, absolutely no experience in that. I mean, I've always been fairly into technology and computers and stuff, but no more than most people. I'm just kind of interested. I used to read Wired magazine and T3 magazine, because I was into gadgets and new advancements in technology and what cool things were coming out. But no, absolutely not. I think that was probably the reason why getting around other people, and certainly why we've created the community that we have now at Dropship Unlocked, which is 700 plus people in entrepreneurship that you can be around every day. That was why it was so important to me, because I just thought, I was kind of on a desert island at the time that I began this. Yes, I joined some communities in the US, but there's only so much you can glean from that when someone's not in your market, and there are so many differences to the way your businesses operate.
No doubt there were some fears, I imagine some doubts, maybe some self-doubt that crept in if you had no experience of this prior. How did you overcome that? How did you overcome any doubts or fears about starting your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of books. I think you almost, when you first start this journey, you are likely to be kind of on your own in this mindset. Like when you make the jump, that realization that I'd mentioned previously, that penny drop moment, you almost expect that all of your friends and family have also made it the same day. And you're like, hey, isn't it great? Like, I'm going to start this business. And all of them are just like, it's just another Tuesday. Like, I'm just going into the office doing the same thing. And you're like, why does no one get it? Like, I'm about to change the course of my life and my family's future and my family tree. It's going to be incredible. And everyone's just like, all right, like back in your box, stay kind of that tall poppy syndrome, they call it, where you got to chop down the tallest poppy in the field that starts to like grow differently to the rest. So I would immerse myself in podcasts, in books, in audiobooks. I mean, I wish that this podcast had existed when I was first starting, because this would have been like finding my tribe, before we actually built it. Unfortunately, it didn't. So I kind of had to piece together like inspiration from different groups and people that were as similar as possible to this. And I just had to constantly remind myself that whatever would come, whatever obstacles I would hit, there would definitely be choppy waters ahead, because this is business. Anything worth building and anything that's worth having is not going to come easy. But I would figure it out. I would have the confidence to figure it out. And I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I didn't want to go into something and think, I'm going to try and be the first person to have ever done this and figured this out. Because why? Why bother? They say that the path is paved with pioneers lying face down with arrows in their back. Right? That was an expression that one of my mentors told me. And I just think that that's true. Like, you don't want to be one of those pioneers that ran out ahead of the pack to try to figure it all out and then failed and, crashed and burned horrifically and went into financial ruin and took the family down with them. It's like, well, just find a working model, adapt it. You only need a small percentage of a growing market to make a 6 or 7 figure business. So yeah, why try and start from scratch?
Yeah, I think we're so fortunate in today's day and age that we are able to surround ourselves, even if no one in our actual family or close friends are into the entrepreneurship model. Obviously, you're very lucky. Your fiance and now wife was able to fully back you, but a lot of people don't have that support around you of people that believe in an entrepreneurial sort of vision of the future. So we are able to surround ourselves with podcasts now, books, and it's brilliant. And you can really start to pick up wisdom from all these different sources. So specifically, so who were some of the mentors or role models that you looked up to as you began your journey in e-commerce? And also, how did they guide and support you?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, that my wife now, Becky, was very supportive and is very supportive to this day. She's always helping me. She's coaching me. Like, anyone who is married to an entrepreneur or with an entrepreneur in a relationship will tell you that it is an emotional roller coaster for both parties, because it's an emotional roller coaster for the entrepreneur, because they're the one on the thing, but then their partner gets the secondary effect of that, where they've had a really bad day and everything's gone wrong and they're close to financial ruin, or head in the clouds, I'm doing amazingly, we had our biggest ever day of sales. And like, you have to, let's say, ride the highs low and the lows high, and you have to find that like stability, that regression to the mean. Otherwise, you will, if you let your identity become too attached to the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, it can really wreck you emotionally, as I found out, and I'll probably share a bit more about later. But so yeah, Becky's absolutely been a very, very stable influence in my journey throughout. She always she's my grounding. She keeps me grounded, and she's very supportive of of the whole journey. She took a huge risk and sacrificed a lot in order to go after this kind of pipe dream that I'd learned about reading some book from an American that she'd never heard of. So you can imagine, for her, that was a massive commitment and sacrifice to take. But I think, talking about the book and the American that did influence me, Tim Ferriss had a huge influence on my my life, a huge impact on me. To this day, the concept of the new rich, I think of that now and think it's so obvious, but so many people miss it. You just walk through London for the day and you look at people on the tube and they're head down and straight to their corporate world and then back home after their kids are in bed. And you just think people forget that there's more to life than just the currency of money that you have to chase. There's that freedom, that time, the connections, the experiences. The life's very rich, and if you blink and you miss it. So that, I think, Tim Ferriss has had a huge impact on me, not just on bigger vision type impacts, but also on more day-to-day tactical stuff like the Pareto principle of 80-20, and the concept of like 20% of your actions or 20% of your products on your store will account for 80% of your sales. This concept that you can batch things. Like when I first started, I had so many emails, I didn't have a virtual assistant hired. I was doing it all myself. So I couldn't be in front of the inbox all day. It was too much. So I would just batch and do 1 hour a day of emails, and I'd let all the emails build up, and then I'd just log in between 4 and 5 p.m, reply to everything, done. Loads of templates, so that's what you do. You batch, then you automate things that you can. So we get systems now to link together. We use Zapier, we use all kinds of automation software to try to make our stores run themselves. And then with outsourcing, once you hire a team of virtual assistants, you can get that balance back of being a successful business owner who's built this like lifestyle business. So there are so many gems in that book, and sometimes I just re-listen to it just to kind of remind myself of what some of the lessons were that maybe I missed the first time around. And I think other influences for me and mentors, I mean, my mum and dad have had a huge impact on me as well. They came from very humble backgrounds, and they created a life for us as a family, which was a really great life. Like my dad took a big leap. He did the same kind of thing in his probably late 20s or mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s, took that leap into starting his own business. His was in like a estate agency. This was before the internet, but then built that from one estate agency up to 2 to 3 to like 10, and then eventually sold that business. And seeing him do that, at the time, he wouldn't have ever labeled himself an entrepreneur. I don't think that term was really used as much then, but seeing him do that and thinking back to it, I'm like, well, he did exactly the same. It was just a different era. It was a different time. But that just enabled me to think, if he can figure it out, I can figure it out too. You just need that willingness to do so.
That's amazing to hear, that entrepreneurial seed that was planted there by seeing your dad's story. But moving on so that's like some broader mentors that you had around you, more specifically into the e-commerce industry. How did you find people within that space that you could then learn some more specific strategies and tactics to grow your own business?
Yeah, I think thank goodness for the internet, right? Because if I'd been trying to do this before the internet in a business, it would have been very difficult to do so. Because as I said, my immediate surroundings there were no e-commerce entrepreneurs that were living location independent lifestyles. That would have meant nothing to the people that I was around at the time. So it was hard. It was difficult. I had to search for them. And I mean, I found some great mentors that I've worked with in the US. I've joined some programs in the US market as well, because e-commerce is a bit more evolved in the US, or a little bit further ahead, a bit more developed. People know what dropshipping is there, or knew, before maybe we kind of caught up a little bit in the UK. I think that's changing now. The UK is definitely catching up. But just in terms of like trying to adapt a model that is prevalent in the US market and just say, okay, I'm just going to do it in the UK market, that was a huge undertaking. That was, a lot of trial and error. I didn't find anyone else in those programs that was operating in the UK market, let alone succeeding. There were people in there from the UK, but they hadn't taken much action as far as I could see. And there weren't people that were like making a full-time income from it in the UK market. So not using that model anyway. So it was having to adapt that. And when I say adapt, I mean things like, people teaching a globally generic model or a model for the US, they can't have the specificity of talking about things like company's house, VAT, HMRC, like legislation in the UK, corporation tax, things like returns policies that are different, supplier terminology, the wording that we'd use, the contracts that we'd use, the regulations in e-commerce, accounting. There's just endless differences. And I think when you just try and shoehorn a model from one market into another and say, right, go on then, run with it, it's very easy to slip up. So that was tough. And I think, I've absolutely had some amazing influences from, people around the world, but adapting it to the UK market, there was a lot of trial and error involved in doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. As with everything that ultimately there'll be some obstacles and perhaps some challenges that you face now. So we'll move into your story now as you're starting to grow and build this business. So what were some of the biggest obstacles and challenges that you would say that you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Yes, I think one of the biggest ones was probably just that overarching adapting the model to work in the UK, the amount of trial and error that came with that. The amount of suppliers I've had hang up on me because I used a script that was maybe applicable to the US market and then just went down like a ton of bricks with someone in the UK. It was very easy in those early days to just write it off and say, oh, well, maybe it doesn't work here. E-commerce isn't for me. It's not going to work in the UK market. So that was definitely one of them. I think the other thing to mention is cash flow management. I've made some oversights in my journey on not taking enough ownership of the finances and the numbers. And I think as a business owner, as the CEO of your own business, you've got to know your numbers. And if you don't, prepare for some nasty shocks and surprises, potentially at a point where it's too late to do anything about. Luckily, I didn't quite reach that point, but there were some very big obstacles and challenges that I had to overcome where we'd spent too much on marketing. We hadn't measured our cash flow correctly. We had too much that we owed in VAT and to suppliers that, we'd made great sales, but we hadn't managed our finances correctly. And as someone who hadn't run a business before, I've got no accountancy training formally. I had to figure this stuff out a lot of the time through trial and error, because I think when you're doing it alone, you don't know what you don't know. So I can't go and say, hey, what should I look out for in terms of VAT cash flow management if I've never encountered an issue with VAT cash flow management? And so now, obviously with our program, I know that that's something that I would have wanted to know about on day one. So I set people up and can show them how to do that. And we make sure that people don't hit the same obstacles and pitfalls that I did along the way. But yeah, at the time, there were some really rough patches where, there was a lot of nerves and stress and anxiety. And are we going to make it? Because my whole family's future was depending on me succeeding with this. And the way I viewed it, my identity was so tied into this that if I had to go back with my tail between my legs and just like admit defeat and say, can I have my job back? I failed. There would have been so many people who would have, been almost like secretly happy to see that, I think, and be like, yeah, you see, that's why people don't quit their jobs and take that kind of a risk. And I didn't want that to happen. I was so adamant that no, I'm not going to let this wreck me. And luckily it didn't. And I pulled through, but very nearly didn't. There were times where I thought we're going to have to go back, that I can't control the level of debt we're in right now. And we got there in the end and we got through it. And now I can lay foundations for other people who are starting out to never be in that same position that I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Some brilliant lessons that you learned sort of at an early step sort of stage there. I'm sure they still sort of teach you now to this day, some of those lessons you learned from the very early days and feeling that stress and that worry from being in those situations. So how did you handle those unexpected or difficult situations? What would you say were the things that you used and leveraged to really help you to get out of those difficult situations?
Yeah, I mean, there have been various difficult situations. One that springs to mind that I think I look back on now as well and remember, it kind of gives me chills to even think about, but I had 2 virtual assistants working for me running my stores. And it was kind of in that time where the financial revelations came to light that actually we were in a difficult situation. We were potentially at risk of going under and having to declare bankruptcy or go into administration or whatever you do with a business that is in that position. And I remember waking up and I was in Bali. So we were seemingly in paradise. Like everyone would dream of being in Bali running their business. And I remember waking up one morning and both of my virtual assistants never logged in that day. And I was like, okay, are they late? Are they stuck in traffic? Like what's going on? So I checked, we have a Slack channel for our, a messenger channel for our team. I logged in an hour later, they're still not there, and the customer issues are building up and there's like orders building up. And there were all kinds of other, issues that you need to deal with as a business owner building up. And I'm starting to think I need somebody here to deal with this stuff. I've got too much else on my plate trying to stop this ship going down. And they never logged in. And I didn't hear from them again until nearly a year later. I'd hired a husband and wife team. I hired the husband first, and then I hired the his wife. And I don't know what happened exactly to this day, but they just left me stranded in my worst point in my business ever, probably at the most stressed I've ever been in my life, and just watching my savings just dwindle from 10 years of having worked in the corporate world to try and build up a future for my family. I'm just throwing money into this business to try to resolve it. And it was really scary. And I think it was the point where I just thought, I can't take anymore. I'm going to snap. And finding out that I owed a supplier more than we had, it was just a very stressful time. And, that was the first time I ever really experienced like sleep loss and insomnia, and just lying awake staring at a ceiling fan in Bali, just thinking, how am I going to get ourselves out of this mess whilst we're in paradise? And that was almost the worst thing, where everyone was looking at us being like, you guys are living the dream. And I'm thinking, at that point, I think I was like, I wish I was just back in a 9-to-5 job where I had, a cushy salary, a nice company car, and nothing to worry about than a mortgage that was easily covered by my monthly salary. But how I did that eventually, and how I did handle that stress and those types of issues, was I realized I have to take ownership over them. As an entrepreneur, you don't have a fallback. You can't go to HR and escalate the issue and say, oh, my team left me on a day. Can I raise a complaint about that? Like, they're gone. If you wait for somebody else to come in and fix the show, you're going out of business. So you have to figure it. And I think now I thrive on that, because I'm like, the buck stops with me as the business owner. And I quite like that, because I'm like, well, then I have to take it seriously. So now I take ownership over things like building a culture, building a team of people who I know are not going to let me down, putting in place contracts, having long-term incentives for team members so that they don't just leave us like that, because they'd be forfeiting the incentives that they get of building up and working with us as a team. And so, I think that's one of the strategies I took. But the other strategy is I tried to surround myself with positive people, positive affirmations in the morning, going out, keeping fit, exercising. That was critical for my own mental well-being, and still is to this day. Like, I have to always go out and do some form of exercise, or have a sauna, or do something that like gets your heart beating and the endorphins flowing. But building a community like we have now at Dropship Unlocked of like-minded individuals and entrepreneurs, I mean, back then for me, the equivalent of that was just a small group of friends that I'd built, one in Australia, one in I think Canada, one in the US, or a couple in the US, and being around them was great. But as I said, they weren't in our market. They didn't understand the nuances of business in the UK. And so I wish that something like Dropship Unlocked had existed back then, because it would have been my go-to place to go and get the help that I needed.
Yeah, amazing experience that you went through. I'm sure some really, really valuable lessons, and you can look back probably, in a way, fondly that you've been through those lessons now, so that you can teach others really how to avoid those situations from people getting in those situations themselves. So clearly a very difficult time for you. So was there a critical sort of decision or juncture that you came up against, and what did you do to navigate that situation?
Yeah, so it was a day where we were about to go out for lunch, and we thought everything was fine. And Becky and I were sitting in our apartment in Chiang Mai, looking out over the infinity pool that we had there, like really, living an amazing life. And I kind of went to my laptop, went to the online bank and just account, and just decided that I needed to withdraw some funds and pay out a dividend payment for us to, get through the next few weeks. And I went to do it, and I just kind of totted up the numbers, and I was like, something's not right here. Like, we don't have enough to pay this upcoming VAT bill that we just received through and pay back the suppliers the amount we owe. Like, just doing that's going to put us very, very tight position. I don't think we can take out any more money. And we sat down and we did a bit of like back of napkin kind of maths and realized this is bad. Like, and up to that point, I think I'd just like relinquished responsibility for the numbers and just always thought, I'm not a numbers guy. Like, I'll let the accountants kind of deal with that. But I think it was that moment where I realized, as the CEO of a company, you have to be a numbers guy. Like, the numbers are what keep you in business, right? So that's why I say now to members in the Dropship Unlocked program, the numbers are critical to your success. You have to understand them. And so that's why we really break those down, or you really focus on those as a key performance indicator for success. And so, there was a moment where I had to make some calls to suppliers. I mean, it came after a lot of stress and like shame and thinking, I don't know, like, how do I go about, telling suppliers? And I just thought that they're human. They want our business to succeed because we bring them a lot of money. We were making a lot in sales. Like, this isn't a case of we were spending a load of money on ads and making nothing. We were probably doing, I don't know, at the time, 60, 70,000 a month in sales. It was before we reached the like hundreds of thousands per month in sales point, but it was still a significant level. We just weren't doing it profitably enough because of cash flow management. So yeah, making some calls to suppliers and just saying, look, I need to level with you. We're in a bit of a sticky situation here. We can pay you, but it's going to have to be staggered. Like, we're going to have to pay you some now, and then some maybe next month, and then some the month after, and we're going to keep generating sales. And I went to this cafe and I had that conversation with them over the phone, and they were like, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, that's cool. They were like, you actually pay us a lot more promptly than a lot of our retailers do. And so I thought, okay, we're in a good position here. These people understand this. I can make it work. I need to just focus on the numbers and look at how did we end up in this situation and how do we get out of it? And so I sat down and kind of re-skilled myself on understanding things like return on ad spend and how that measures into your cost per sale and what a profitable cost per sale was for us. Once you take off the input and the output VAT effect and you kind of net the two off and you realize, well, actually, no, this is the net profit that we're making on every sale. How much can we afford to spend on a sale on average, with whatever our average order value was at the time? So without getting too into the weeds now, I sat there for a solid day in this cafe and just thought, I'm not leaving here until I fully understand where our business is and where we need to do to get there and like what the route is and the plans. And that, I'd say, for me was the juncture where, again, I realized this is one of those moments. This is where it gets rocky in entrepreneurship. And you have a choice now. You either crumble, declare bankruptcy, go back and admit defeat, and then go back to doing what you were doing before and remember this all as if it was some vivid dream, or you look at the light at the end of the tunnel, remember the reason why you're doing this, to create a future of time and location freedom for me and my family, and you power through and you get this done. And it was quite an exhilarating thing to think back on. Very stressful, but yeah, having had Becky by my side to support me through it mentally, and even financially at times. We fully relied on her income as a freelancer for certain points where I was like, we can't take any money out of the business. We don't have it at the time. But we got to the point where we were like, okay, now we made 5K this month. Now we made 10K. Now we made 50K this month, in profit. And at that point, this was a distant memory because we paid all those suppliers back. Now we're their best customer in some of our stores. Like, some of our suppliers we are their biggest retailer. But I always think back to those days and think, wow, I wonder if they realized the predicament we were in.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear about the lessons you learned there. And obviously, you were having to learn this pretty much by yourself, as you say. You're learning this as you went along without having proper support and mentorship, especially around the numbers side of things with the VAT that you weren't really familiar with at the time. So you had to learn so much as you went on. And to see from, going through that experience now from, all the incredible success you've had afterwards, it shows you how much you learned from that, and you weren't ever going to allow yourself to get back in that situation again. So speaking about that success, now moving away from that resilience that you had to show through that period, what have been some of the most significant rewards and milestones that you've achieved in your e-commerce business, and how did you celebrate those brilliant moments?
Yeah, there have been some really significant rewards and milestones along the journey, and to be honest, I feel like I'm still experiencing those every day. Just this morning, I managed to spend some quality time with my two sons, before the oldest goes off to nursery. And I just think, if I was working in my old job, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. I would have been out the door probably before they even woke up, commuting, and then probably wouldn't be back until they're gone to sleep. So for me, it's little milestones and rewards like that on a daily basis that I now experience. And I know that I could take them on a 6-month holiday, because they're not at school yet, anywhere in the world, and nothing would change. We would just experience some amazing life-changing environments and places because we don't have to be tied to one place. So it's that location freedom that I think for me is one of the most significant rewards, but it's ongoing. I think the numbers are one thing that I'm not going to pretend that I'm not motivated by money at all. Of course, that's a nice benefit of running a nice business like this. It's profitable. As I said, we've hit around £6 million in sales in my online businesses in the last 5 years. And that's cool, but the numbers alone are kind of intangible. Like, they don't really mean anything. They're just numbers in a bank account. It's what they enable you to do that matters, and it's what you choose to do with them, and it's the freedom and the way it makes you feel knowing that you have that buying power, that financial freedom and ability to travel to amazing places or go and build memories as a family, and with my wife Becky and my two boys, go and experience places that we would have never dreamed of being able to go to on holiday. We've had some great experiences, and I've got so many more lined up for us. So I think for me, the most significant reward is really that time, that location freedom, and the daily celebration of never having to commute to an office or, sit on a tube on a way to a team meeting or things like that you just take for granted, that I say at the time I didn't hate them, but you look back on them now and you think that would have been such a waste if I hadn't changed course.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the reason why we started in the first place, is to have that freedom, the location, financial and time freedom that you're now able to enjoy. So what would you say are some of the biggest accomplishments or milestones that you're most proud of and that you achieved along the way from when you started to where you are now?
I mean, there are so many. I think hiring the first VA is a big one, because that makes you realize that you get your time back, right? And you enable someone on the other side of the planet who you've maybe never met to provide for their family as well. That's one of the most rewarding things, hiring your first virtual assistant, I think, just to kind of answer customer support emails, answer the phone, fulfill orders for you, do all of the kind of admin stuff. That when you get someone really good that you can rely on, that's awesome. That's a big accomplishment. I think the next thing often the financial goals or the financial milestones that you achieve. So, the first 2 orders, I was lying in bed ill, I think, the first time I ever had an order, and I was off work on a sick day and my phone just went ching, and it was like a £900 order, and then another one for £800 or something. And I just thought, wow, I've just made more lying in bed ill than I would have made if I had got out of bed, commuted to London, done a full day of work, then come back. I've just made more and I've done nothing. Like, obviously I had done stuff. I'd front loaded it because I'd been creating the stores and building the website and stuff and running ads to them. But that was a big milestone for me. I thought, wow, that just has shown me what's possible. And then I think it's just like gradually it's sequential. You're not going to go from where you are right now, if you're in the position where I was back then, to where I am today overnight. It's not going to happen. But if, like I did at the time, you kind of have that penny drop moment where you realize, well, I'm now willing to learn the path to get there. And I know that there'll be problems, but I want to put myself into a community of entrepreneurs that are going to help me overcome those problems and get there. Then you can absolutely do it too. I mean, I remember the first 10K month that we had. It was an amazing feeling. And I was like, we've just made £10,000 in the business. I remember the first 10K day we had. I remember the first 30K day we had. I think we did like 32,000 in a day or something. And I just thought, wow, that is huge. And then we did like a £350,000 month or something, or maybe slightly less, £320,000 month. And I just thought, this is incredible. Like, I used to see a 6-figure salary in a year as like the thing that I was aspiring for in my 40s, 50s, whatever. If I could be on 100 grand a year, I'd be laughing. I'd be able to do whatever. Now we might make that in profit in a month. If it's a good month, maybe it's slightly less if it's not, but it's like, to have the ability to do that and get to that point over time has been an incredible journey, but it doesn't all happen at once. So I think it's the art of delayed gratification that's so important. You have to appreciate and celebrate those wins as and when they come, and don't be too disheartened by the lows, because they will be plentiful too.
Yeah, when those achievements come around, do you make sure that you mark them and you celebrate them? How did you celebrate those achievements as you were achieving them?
Yeah, for me, it was like, I'd post a screenshot or something into our small group of friends that were running these types of businesses. Like I said, one in America, two in America, one in Canada, one in Australia. And I'd share it with those guys and we'd be like, oh, I just did £150,000 in sales over Black Friday weekend or something. Or we just hit our first 250K month. And that was cool. But, as I say, I wish that something like we have now at Dropship Unlocked had existed back then, because as you know, in the community, when someone now makes their first sale, people celebrate. Like, people want to celebrate each other's success, and it's such a positive community. And I think that we've built that because that's what I wish had existed at the time. That's what I needed. I needed those 700 people there to pat me on the back and be like, well done, congratulations, because I only had maybe 4 of them, and it really helped me. So I can only imagine what it feels like now for our new members who are getting congratulated and helped out along every step of their journey.
Yeah, and now you can have these experiences with your friends and family because of the success that you've achieved now, and you're able to take time off and go away and spend time. I'm interested to hear, when you've had these achievements, have you marked them by going away, and have you taken your family abroad, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some incredible holidays and trips. And what I find now is with 2 children, I can't quite be as spontaneous as maybe I'd like to, so if I have a huge record day of sales, I'm like, right, okay, we're going to the Maldives. It's not quite as easy to just drop everything and just go as it used to be, but with a bit of planning and a bit of booking, now, like I said, last year we were able to take a month out and just go and hire an amazing apartment in the marina in Dubai and just kind of live there for a month, or I think it was about 6 weeks, and just experience life there. We did some work while we were there. We did some travel. We got, the children to experience a new environment, new culture. And it was cool. And it's just that great freedom and ability that it gives you. So yeah, of course, if we have a really big milestone in the business, if something amazing happens, then my wife and I will go out for dinner, we'll celebrate. But this is what I mean. Like, the numbers only matter up to a certain point. It's what you then do with them that matters. And for me, it's experiences. It's not material possessions that motivate me. It's memories and experiences that matter to me.
Absolutely. And that's the rewards for the hard work you've put in and that you've earned. And would you say that spending your time with family is some of the most rewarding times that you have now after all the work you've put in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate for gratitude and reminding yourself of what you're grateful for every morning, and really, like, just going over the things that you have in your life that you're very lucky and grateful to have. And there's very rarely something that comes up when I'm doing that daily practice that's that's something that money alone can just purchase as a material possession. Very rarely, it's always the memories that I think of in the past that have been most significant and I'm most thankful for are always experiences with friends, with family, with loved ones. And so, yes, the money is great, but really what the money does is enables freedom. It enables you to buy other people's time, experience, resources, so that you can get that freedom, that time back, and enjoy time with your friends and family. So yeah, it's quite deep, but when you think of it like that, I think that's really deep down my why. That's what motivates me.
So rewarding, and you wouldn't be able to see these sort of achievements and be able to give this sort of freedom to your family had you not taken that step, had you not sat on that park bench and cracked open the gin and tonic with your fiance and now wife Becky, and to go from there to what you're able to achieve now is incredible. And also, obviously, I know how rewarding you find it to see members inside the Dropship Unlocked community as well. That all comes as part of your why today, is actually seeing the rewards that your work as giving to other people, including myself. I know you find that very rewarding as well.
Yeah, I mean, building Dropship Unlocked was started off as almost like a passion project where I thought, I could just remain living in Thailand and run e-commerce businesses and kind of just sail off into the sunset and be done with it. But there comes a point where you think, well, what's the next thing that brings fulfillment other than just money? And it's enabling other people to go on that life-changing journey that you've just been on. It's like putting down the ladder and saying, hey, look, it's awesome up here. Come and have a look. Come and look what it is like behind the curtain, where you don't have to report to a boss, where you control your future, your location, your time. And so that's why we called it Dropship Unlocked. It's unlocking time and financial freedom for people and location freedom for people. And I think that seeing our 700 members, I think we have nearly now inside our community, celebrating their wins and their successes and just helping each other out. And, if someone's having a bad time, like, everybody kind of crowds in and tries to help them out and does them favors. And it's just an awesome, positive community that we've built. We've been very selective on who we let into it. There are a lot of courses out there that will just give you a load of pre-recorded videos and say, good luck with it. Like, hope you get on okay. And then maybe they'll try and upsell you on coaching and things like that. But we have 2 live Q&A calls as part of the program every single week. And so as you're going through the modules, people are in there asking questions. I know that you're on a lot of those calls with them, helping share your own experiences of running these businesses as well, James. And so that's why we're the leading e-commerce mentorship program in the UK now, offering best-in-class service and an incredible customer journey for our members.
Yeah, absolutely. I can testify to that. Obviously, joining the Dropship Unlocked program, I'm so thankful that you put together. After 12 months, I was able to leave my 9-to-5 job, which was always the goal, and hire a VA. And now I'm in complete control of my time. And also I see the rewards from helping other members as well. And I spend a lot of time inside the members group, helping out with new members to create their own businesses and see the same sort of success that we've seen. But it's all woven into what we've spoken about today, and the lessons you've learned and the difficult times you've been through. I think you can tell that they've all been woven into the training and how it really is supportive, and the mentorship is there to help members not have the difficult experiences. And I like a saying that they say, so men learn from mistakes, but wise men learn from other people's mistakes. And what you're sharing is, the lessons that you're teaching is because you've been on the other side of that and you've tried to set it up on your own, and you're teaching others how to do things without having to make those same mistakes.
Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes, or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favourites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
So for our listeners now, let's give them some practical advice and some tips. So from the journey that you've had, let's give our listeners some real advice that they can take on and use. So what are some of the key lessons that you've learned through your time and your journey about marketing and branding?
Marketing and branding, I think, don't focus on it too much, because there are people who are probably better at it than you, who eventually, if you run your business right from the start and you don't focus on getting it perfect, but instead getting it live and launched, if you're bootstrapping, get your business up and running, get it profitable, get it making its first few sales, and then use some of the profits that you have from that to invest in branding. In terms, I guess branding and marketing is slightly different, because I think that marketing is key in terms of running ads and understanding your numbers and your profitability. That is something you should take ownership of, and that's something that we guide people through in week 5 of our program. But I think the branding, and people worry too much about how a store looks and how superficial that I want my logo to be just like this and I want it to work like this, and I'm like, come on, you're weeks into building your business now, and you're still worrying about minor details that are not going to matter in the long run. So focus on getting it converting visitors to your store into actually purchasing customers, because that's what pays the bills. That's what then you can use to hire a world-class team of branding experts to come in and give your store a branding overhaul. So I've always been of that view that I'd rather have something that works, that is profitable, that I can then use the profits from to purchase the skills of people who know way more about certain areas like conversion rate optimization, branding, marketing than me, and get them to work on the business. That's what being a business owner is. I think so many people get caught up in but I'm a graphic designer, so I want to build my own logos and I want to build my own color schemes. And that's fine if you can do it quickly and keep moving. But if you let that hold you back, you're missing the point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how have you now implemented those lessons that you've learned into your businesses now?
Well, I think since day one of running the very first e-commerce store that I started, it's just making sure that we abide by those principles. And as I've built all of my stores, it's been the same thing. It's like, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't worry too much about branding and navigation menus and, how things look, and just get them live, get them up and running. Your customers will soon tell you if something's not working or doesn't make sense, and you can adapt it and tweak it. And then eventually you hire people who are the best in the industry at their one thing that they focus on as a skill, and you benefit from that without having to have the steep learning curve of years of trial and error to get there. So, and by the way, we do the exact same thing inside Dropship Unlocked. So we have our community where you have the live coaching calls twice a week. You have 6 weeks of in-depth content. I think there's 35 hours worth of training videos where it's over-the-shoulder tutorials, building your store, running ads, how to pick a niche, how to find suppliers, how to sign them, how to contact them, supplier scripts, templates, legal documents, the whole thing. But when it first started, it was a minimum viable product. It was hey, here's what you need to get your store from 0 to up and running and profitable. And then the members that joined us were but what do I need now for this? And how do I run this kind of marketing? So I was oh, good idea. I'll add another module in for that. And over time, it's built into this incredible library of answers and content. And, you are, by joining today, you are benefiting from the 699 people so far and counting that came before you that you can benefit from all of the questions and obstacles that they had along the way and just keep moving, hit the ground running, save yourself 3 years of trial and error and risk and expensive potential failure, and just shortcut the route to success and just jump in.
That's it. And so important just to be done instead of perfect. And that's why it's taught throughout the program to have a minimum viable store to start with. And then from there, you can just build and grow. And it's exactly the same principles that you apply and is now applied to the businesses that you help people to get set up. And also we know how important it is to cultivate relationships with customers and build a loyal following. So what sort of strategies or approaches have you had or have you used to connect with your customers?
Yeah, I mean, at Dropship Unlocked, we continue to update our program. We're always over delivering on every aspect that we can. We're always taking customer feedback on board, and it's worked. When you have an incredible product that you really focus on the product and you're not just focused on the marketing and then the product kind of falls down behind the scenes, you don't become the highest reviewed and top rated e-commerce mentorship program in the UK on Trustpilot by not focusing on the product. You just wouldn't get there. So that's happened through iterations, through building a loyal customer base, asking them what they want, listening to them, helping them in all ways that we possibly can. Because as I say, there's courses out there with pre-recorded video lessons that kind of just leave you to it. And if that's what you want, you'll always find something that's cheaper out there that can do it and, piece together the information from YouTube videos and stuff if you've got 5 years to try and figure it out on your own. But nothing comes close to the hand holding that we go through inside Dropship Unlocked from, the very first, like, how do I register my company, right through to how do I build a culture and a team in my company that continues the operations that I've built running without my personal involvement. And that's how you build loyal customers. It's by over delivering on the product that they've purchased.
Brilliant. So you talked about some of the challenges that you experienced right at the start of your journey, but now more up to date in the last year or so, what sort of challenges or setbacks have you come across and overcome?
Yeah, it's a different type of challenge that comes as businesses grow and they scale. It's now my challenge is fighting complexity and trying to keep operations streamlined, making sure that the stores continue to run smoothly, that, suppliers are paid on time, that, I think the way that I view it now is if I can build a team of incredible people who take ownership over their particular domain, then they become self-sufficient. If you hire the right people and you build the right culture, you don't need to be in there constantly struggling with things. So I think for me, one of the biggest hurdles and obstacles of recent times has been time management and not being able to do everything that is needed of me. But I've started to grow as a person, as a manager, as a leader, and say, actually, I need to get better at hiring and delegating and creating standard operating procedures so that my team know what they need to do, and then just get the hell out of their way, as they say, and hire the right people, then get out of their way. So there's that. I think the other side of it is finding the balance between, work and family life as well. I built these businesses initially as lifestyle businesses because I wanted to spend time with my family. And there's a tendency at times for the work to start to creep in and be like, hang on a second, like if we really want to grow this and build something incredible here that changes thousands of people's lives, it's going to take up a lot of my time, and I want to continue to enjoy what I do. So it's finding that time and blocking out time with the family, and blocking out alone time and making sure I still look after my own health and exercise every day is important for me, because otherwise you can sometimes let stress get the better of you, especially with 2 children under 2.
I can only imagine. Yeah, absolutely. But this is the sort of journey of an entrepreneur. Initially, you were doing everything yourself, wearing every hat, as they say. Then it gets to a point where it's about hiring the right people for the right jobs in your business, so you can just take a high level approach, which is where you've got yourself to now. So to go back in time again, so for people that are aspiring to be an entrepreneur, what advice do you have for these aspiring entrepreneurs? So people that are just getting started in their own e-commerce journey, and what do you think are the key qualities? I'd be keen to hear what are the sort of key qualities you think are needed for people to succeed in the e-commerce space?
Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't kid yourself that you need to be the one that creates this unicorn startup idea that no one's ever thought of. Save yourself years of time, wasted effort, risk, potential financial ruin, just out of trying to be unique, and just work with people who've already done it. Like, we've done it for 700 people now in our community who are either, just starting their journey or already up and running. Just get started. Just get started and follow a proven model. I think the other thing is people who wait to take action. There will never be a right time to do it. If you wait for the right time, it's a bit like when I said at the very beginning, the colleague that said to me, "I've always saw you as an entrepreneur." That was my moment that I realized there will never be a right time. You just need to take ownership and action and say, I'm going to do it. So, don't wait till you're back from holiday because then you're going to tackle it. Or I'll wait till my exams are over and then I'm going to do it. Or I'm just going through the process of selling my house. And then after that house sale has gone through, then I'll focus on my business. Or when work quietens down, then maybe I'll have time. You won't. You're kidding yourself if you think you will. So I think my advice is just, I've seen it too many times where people procrastinate and then they just never do it. And then before you know it, what happens is you're in the golden handcuffs. Your life becomes too comfortable. The mortgage payment is too high in relation to your income and you can't take the risk. So build up a decent safety buffer whilst you're working. Listen to podcasts like this, immerse yourself in the world of people who are showing what's possible and become inspired by it. And don't let the naysayers or the negative people that surround you in life bring you down. Join a community of like-minded people for accountability and just get started, because done and live and profitable beats perfect but not launched every day.
Absolutely, that's it. And just getting started is often the hardest step, but the most important one. And once you've started, you can learn as you go, and you learn so much as you go. So in terms of sort of the qualities or characteristics, have you seen a trend in the people that you've seen and go on to succeed? Any sort of common characteristics in these people?
Yeah, I think perseverance, making sure that they know that it will be a rocky road ahead. It's not going to be smooth sailing, but still having the willingness to say, well, I'm going to figure it out when it happens. Coachability, taking on board feedback, being open to saying, actually, maybe I didn't know it all, and maybe I do need to look at something in a slightly different way in order to open doors for me down the line, because we've been through this from start to finish. Someone who's just starting and might not see the reasons why we're taking certain steps at the beginning that don't become clear until 6 months, 12 months into running your business. So learn from people that can provide you that kind of foresight. Just, I think, determination, positivity, these are all attributes that we look for when we're selecting people to bring into our community. It's that willingness to learn, adapt, and people who are not going to procrastinate, who are not going to say, let me, think about it. And then 5 years later, they're still in the same position because they never took action. And like I say, they're locked into the trajectory that they're on in life. We need people who have a deep why that's deeper than the money. If they just say, I just want to do it because I want to earn 10 grand a month. Once you hit 10 grand a month, what are you going to do then? And then it's like 50, then it's 100, but the money alone won't make you happy. It's what the money enables you to do. It's the deep driver, the why beyond the money, whether it's starting a charity, whether it's helping your family, whether it's helping out a relative, or having the ability to pay if somebody gets sick or, needs a new house or whatever, a new car. It's like, for me, I think it was the time and location freedom that it would give me and my future family, who at the time didn't even exist. Now I have 2 sons, and I'm so thankful that I took action when I did 5 years ago, because without having done that, I'd be in a completely different situation now, and they wouldn't have the life that they're about to have unfold in front of them available to them. So you just got to ask yourself, what's your why?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lewis, for sharing your story with me today. It's great to hear it. I've heard bits and pieces before, but to have it in full, like we've just discussed today, has been amazing and truly inspiring to hear from where you've come from to where you are today. And on that note, we're going to be talking about other people's success as well now. We have a listener's success story to go through.
We do indeed, yeah. We've got a brilliant success story today from one of our Dropship Unlocked members, Mike. So Mike recently shared the news of his first sale inside our private members group, and it was a very healthy order value indeed.
That's right. Mike's first sale was for £4,299, and he received this just after 1 week of paid advertising. So this shows how quickly you can start to see great returns using the high-ticket dropshipping model. So if you consider the average sort of gross profit margin from a sale is about 30%, so that's almost £1,300 profit from just that one order.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear his success. Just think, with the £1,300 in profit after just a single week of advertising, Mike's now got the enviable challenge of, how do I invest that profit? What do I do? How can I reinvest it into the business to scale up ads? So I'm really excited to be following Mike's journey and hear what he achieves next. But I guess it's important to say that whilst it's a huge congratulations from us to Mike for that amazing first sale, this isn't rare in the world of high ticket dropshipping. This is just an example of the types of numbers and things that people achieve and are frequently achieving within our members group. And we love to celebrate those successes when you share them with us. So please do continue to share them with us. And congratulations again, Mike, on an incredible first sale.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found today's episode useful and inspiring.
Remember, if you're ready to take the next step towards creating your own high-ticket dropshipping business, our step-by-step mentorship program can help. Just head to dropshipunlocked.com/free to learn more and get started on your own journey to financial independence.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode, and leave us a review if you've enjoyed what you hear today. We love hearing from our listeners, and we'll even read out some reviews on the next episode.
And finally, thanks for choosing to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you, and we'll be back soon with more valuable insights and tips on high-ticket dropshipping.